All right, so now that you nailed the navigation, let's go ahead and hold Control and N to clear the canvas. And we still have our arrow, but we're gonna jump ahead a little bit and we're gonna learn about tools. Again, we're gonna keep the UI as it is. Probably let's go to Preference and click on Enable Customize so we have a bit more space. And let's go ahead and bring in the tool. So I just brought in my palette or my drawer, and then we have the tools in here. So I wanna click on the arrow and I'm gonna click on this cylinder 3D. So because I already had something dropped in the canvas, when you switch between tools, you are already in the edit mode. You don't have to drag it every time, right? So this is already 3D. So let's go ahead and change a couple of things just because I prefer to work without this material and without this gradient. So the gradient has to do with the document. Let's go to the document palette and let's go to this range right here and let's click and drag that so that we have a cleaner background. And the same thing goes for the material. Let's go to the material palette. We also have this large thumbnail that allows you to bring in all the materials available to you. And I'm gonna keep it super simple. I'm gonna go with the basic material. All right. Now, the next important thing that you need to know is that in ZBrush, you have primitives and you have polymeshes. The main difference is that the primitives are controlled by a mathematical equation or just a function really. So with this cylinder, if you go to where it says initialize in this palette, I'm gonna click on initialize and you can, by the way, click and drag to move this around. So in this initialize, you can tell the sort of like math numbers, how you want to initialize or change this primitive, right? So for example, you can change the amount of divide to something like 3, and that creates kind of like a prism. And you can change the subdivide. You won't be able to see it here, or you can change the taper at the top. So you can do this type of stuff. So it is kind of like non-destructive before you convert it into a polymesh. So very, very handy stuff, but it's important to know the difference because if I set this to, let's set it to 0, and let's set this back to 32, right? So this is how it was before. Let's say if I see this and I want to start sculpting or doing something, if I click anywhere on this, I'm going to get this pop-up saying, to enable sculpting, please convert 3D primitive to a polymesh by pressing Make Polymesh 3D button. So it tells you what to do, but it is annoying if you don't understand the difference between the two. So that's it. The primitives are just things that you can control from a function. Depending on which one you choose are going to be different. So just to give you another example, go ahead and click on the thumbnail and choose something like the gear 3D, right? So again, this is something that is driven by a function. So you see the initialized settings are slightly different. You can just go ahead and change the width. You can change the coverage. You can change the actual spikes that you see here. Those are given by this outer profile. So you can do things like that. So you're basically clicking and dragging to control a shape based on these values, which is really, really handy. But it might not be what you're looking for all the time because you cannot actually sculpt this. You just need to edit them from these values. So let's go back to the cylinder 3D. Again, this is a primitive 3D. I haven't changed anything. And in order to be able to sculpt this and see things a bit clearer, we need to click on this Make Polymesh 3D. So let's click on that. And now this is a mesh that I can actually start editing. So right now, because my default brush is the standard brush, I'm going to be able to do this type of thing. So I'm essentially deforming that cylinder. So I'm going to press the Control and Z to undo that in case you do something like that. And we're going to bring a couple of things into the UI that are also very essential. So let's go to the Preference palette. Let's go to Enable Customize. And instead of removing things, we're actually going to bring a few things in. So we're going to go to the Transform palette here, and we're going to look for this polyframe, this one right here. So it's called the Draw Polyframe. So I'm going to hold Control, Alt, click and drag in here, and we can put it anywhere we want. Don't worry, you can just reset this in any way you want to or place it whatever you feel like it. This is actually in the default UI is somewhere here around the right-hand side, but it is fine. So this one allows you to visualize the polyframe of the mesh. All right, that's all it is. And this makes things a little bit easier. Now, as I was creating new pieces of geometry, you'll see that all of the ones that I created before, including our arrow, they're in here. That means that in ZBrush, we can actually jump between windows or let's say drawers of different tools. And that's why they're called tools, whenever we need to. So if I want to go back to the arrow, I just click on it and there's nothing but the arrow. I have the other arrow here. I have the original cylinder 3D that hasn't been converted into a polymesh, the one that you can control with the initialize settings. I have the gear in here. I have the original gear. So I have a bunch. So let's go to the polymesh, and it is a polymesh because it has this PM3D in as the name, but don't worry, we can change all of that. So we're going to select this one. And just so that we don't get overwhelmed with a bunch of other things, I'm gonna click on this R. So this R here in the tool palette is to basically restore things. So I'm gonna click on that, and now you have only one. At any point, you can click on the thumbnail here, and then you can just retrieve anything that you've done in the past. You see the gear is still here, and the cylinder and all of that. So this is just a way to keep things very clean. All right, so now I'm going to introduce you to one of the most fundamental things in ZBrush, which are the subtools, which are kind of like different objects or having multiple objects within the same scene. That's kind of like the closest thing to think about it. So in the tool palette, you have the subtools. So if you were creating kind of like a hammer, right? And the hammer is your tool, then the subtools are the different parts that hammer is made out of. So you have the iron or the metal part, then you have the handle that might be like a rubber and a couple of screws, and that's it, right? So you can have multiple pieces in the subtools. I'm gonna click here to open up the palette or the sub palette. And if you click around the sides, you see how my cursor changes a little bit? We can click and drag to move around. So by expanding any sub palette in ZBrush, then things are gonna get a little bit crazy. And then the more things that you expand, the larger the things are gonna be. If you wanna maintain all of this open, you can press the Shift key and then you have lots of different things. I wouldn't recommend doing that just yet. Remember, we're building a system. We are not optimizing it just yet. We're gonna open up the subtool palette. Cool. We can click on this visible count slider and reduce or increase that just so that we can visualize more or less. And we're gonna get into the subtools in just a second. But another one that is just as important is the Gizmo 3D that I briefly showed you before. So I'm gonna click on move or scale or rotate. It doesn't really matter. Any of these three will bring in the Gizmo. Because the thing is, you have the move, scale, and rotate all within the same object. So you can use these arrows to move freely. You can use these arrows to move based on an axis. You can scale things proportionally. You can scale things based on an axis. And the same thing with the rotation. You can rotate on an axis with the color lines, or you can do it based on the camera with this one right here. So you have basically those three in one thing. Now we're gonna go ahead and continue this introduction to ZBrush, but we're gonna actually start building something. So this is gonna be the body for our character. And I'm gonna introduce you to a few features as we go. So every little bit of the character is gonna be slightly different, but the intention is to show you the pillars of ZBrush. So now that we have this gizmo here, I'm gonna make sure that the gizmo is right in the center of the object. So, which it is in this case, but just for future reference, if for whatever reason the gizmo appears here or you accidentally do something like this and it appears there, that is because you're holding control and actually masking things. But ignore all of that, right? So I'm just telling you in case that you accidentally do something like that and you have the gizmo there, it is very frustrating if you don't know how to solve it. The simplest thing is to click on this icon, which is to unlock the gizmo. So now whatever I do right now is not gonna be locked to this object. So I can rotate things around, I can scale, I can move, and it's not gonna be locked. So I'm not affecting anything. That is because I unlocked that. So once this is unlocked, I'm gonna click on reset rotation. I'm gonna reset the location, and then I'm gonna lock it again, right? So now we know for sure it is in the middle. All right, so let's go ahead and press the green box in here, and we're gonna scale that up a little bit. This is gonna be, like I said, the body of our character. And I'm gonna kind of like ignore the navigation because I assume that you already went through the exercise and you know how to navigate things quite easily. So the really cool thing about the gizmo is not just that you can scale things up and down, rotate and place it, is that you can actually deform this shape. So if I click on this gear icon, you see I can change this shape into anything that I have in here. So for example, if I'm not happy with a cylinder, I can click on ring 3D and it's going to create this new ring 3D. But we're gonna keep it simple, so let's undo that. We're not gonna do that. Let's go to the gear icon, and you have a bunch of deformers. So these are really, really simple to use, even though it might look super complicated. Again, it might be a counterintuitive way of learning ZBrush, but I think those are some of the most basic things that you need to understand before moving into the actual sculpting and detailing. So I'm gonna go ahead and use something like the smooth. I'm gonna click on smooth, and when you click on that, you get these that at first sight, it looks a little bit complicated. Like, what are all of these additional controllers? I thought we were just learning navigation. Why are you throwing me in the deep end of ZBrush? But it's actually really simple. All of these orange cones or any orange cone that you see in the deformers are your controllers, and anything that is white is usually to do with a change in profile or a change in the effect that you're doing. And the ones here, this green, red, and blue, they refer to the symmetry or the different axes. So we're gonna keep things super simple, and I'm gonna click on this and I'm gonna push it down. So when I do that, you see how I'm kind of like inverting the effect of the smooth. I'm pushing things out. And if I push this up, I'm just going to smooth it. So I'm going to smooth this out about there. So I can use this symmetry, like the green one right here. And you notice if I just hover over, it tells me the Y symmetry. You can set it to 1 to make it parallel, or you can set it to 0 to mirror, or you can leave it at 0 and it's not going to have any symmetry. So I can click on this one and go up once. That is my 1, or I can go twice, and that is my 2, right? So you see, just pay attention to this area right here. There's like a tiny white number. So 0, let's actually undo that. Click once, that is 1, and then up, that is 2. So that means that I can just move the top or the bottom, and it's going to do it at the same time. So very, very simple stuff. Let's go back because I can actually do it manually. So I did the top one. Let's go ahead and do the bottom one, like so. And I'm just basically converting that simple cylinder into a softer shape. Now, the white one that I mentioned here is to control that sort of tapering or the profile. So you see it's a very smooth curvature. I can push this and increase that so that it's more pronounced, or I can decrease that. Let's just push it like so. And now it becomes almost like a Lego man, right? So this is super, super powerful. So I'm going to play with this to get something like this, maybe a little bit more than that. And let's go ahead and click on the gear icon and click on accept. So all of these things that I show you are in a way non-destructive. Unless you're happy with the smoothing and all of that, you don't have to accept. You can click on reset and it will send you back to that cylinder. So let's click on accept. Perfect. So this is the body for our character. All right, so now we're gonna get into the subtool territory, and we're gonna do another exercise that is going to be towards creating this character, but you can do it on your own. So in the subtools, we have a single object. Let's go ahead and scroll this a little bit, but we can do a bunch of things with the subtools. So the only ones that we're gonna concentrate on are the duplicate, delete, and the append, nothing else, right? So what I would recommend is just to continue with this idea of simplifying the workflow. So because I have the enable customize still on, I'm gonna hold Control Alt, and I'm gonna put my duplicate in here, maybe a little bit closer, it's fine. I'm also gonna put my delete, Control Alt, click and drag the delete, and then I'm gonna hold Control Alt and append. All right, like I told you, this UI is just a temporary thing so that we can learn the pillars of ZBrush. Then you can choose to go back to the standard or creating your own. It's very, very easy. And let's go back and turn this customize disable. Okay, so now that we have the important ones that we want to concentrate on, we can go to this visible count and scale that a little bit. So we have essentially like our layers, right? So that's another misconception, but it is important to make sure that is covered. So the subtools are not layers necessarily, because in each subtool you can have millions of polygons in each subtool. So it's kind of like having multiple objects within the same tool. Right? It's going back to that analogy that I mentioned. If your tool is a hammer, then in the subtool you can have the iron part or like the metal part. Then you can have the handle and a couple of screws as another subtool. So for our character that right now is just an egg, we're gonna give it some legs and some arms. So to do that, we're gonna click on append. Now, if we click append, ZBrush is going to open up exactly the same tool palette that we had here. Remember, if I click on this one, we're gonna have the same things. And you might think, well, what's the difference between clicking on this one and clicking on append? The main difference is that when you click on this tool, right? Just do a quick recap. If I choose something like the Ring 3D, now this is all I'm gonna see. I'm gonna see a Ring 3D, and I'm gonna see the initialize settings. If I go all the way down to the bottom, and I can change this, I can reduce the size, because this is a primitive that is being driven by this function. Now, I'm gonna open up this subtool, and you'll see that now I have a different tool, but we want to concentrate on the character. So let's go back in here, and I'm going to click on the R again, just to keep things clean. And you can still access that object that we just did from here, but I'm going to keep things clean. So that is the main difference, that if you click on the tool and you select something else, you're basically telling ZBrush, hey, I want to work on a different tool. I'm sick of using the hammer. I'm going to use a saw or something else, or a screw. So it's a different tool. And from what I've experienced with my students, this is one of the most confusing things, because usually in a 3D application, a tool usually refers to like a brush or a feature or something that you can actually use to build something in the 3D application. But in ZBrush, the tool is your object. The tool is your mesh and what you're creating. So that's a very important distinction. So going back to the append button, this is going to append a new subtool in here. So I'm going to click on append, and I'm going to choose cylinder 3D. Now remember, before, this is a 3D primitive, right? If I click on this one and you'll see it just gets added below it. Right now, you notice because I have the polyframe enabled, that's the one that I have selected. If I choose the second one, if I click on the second one, now I have selected this cylinder. And the main thing here is that when I append an object, it's no longer a 3D primitive because we already have chosen our initial cylinder to be a polymesh 3D. So anytime that you append something, it's already going to be ready for you to sculpt. So there's no need to overthink it. It's basically once you have your polymesh 3D, like we did with the body of our character, this thing right here. Once you start adding things, it's just going to be really, really easy because they're all going to be ready to sculpt and to move things around. Okay, so let's select the second one. And you notice that obviously the color changes. That's because we're selecting a different thing. So if we are editing this, the cylinder, we won't be able to affect the other one, which is super important thing and actually really, really handy. So let's go ahead and bring in the gizmo by pressing any of these letters, like the W, E, or the R for rotate. And this is going to be one of the legs of the character. So I'm going to rotate around. Oh, and I'm going to give you an extra tip that is important to know at this point. If you start rotating around and then you hold the shift key, then you're going to snap the camera to the different views. So you'll see in the reference here on the top right, you have the head. If you click the head itself or any of these axes, you will be able to see that camera angle. So if I click on the head and I move it to the front, now we're in the front. If I click and drag it to the side, now we're on the side. So I want to make sure that as I rotate this around and press the shift key to snap to the front or to the side, I'm looking at this from the front of this face. Okay, so that means that the x-axis is going to be my horizontal axis, the z-axis is going to be looking straight at me, and the y-axis or the green axis here is going to be the vertical axis. So that is important because then we're going to be using symmetry. Again, we're going to learn the system and then we're going to optimize it. So this is going to be my leg. I'm going to go ahead and stretch this out and I'm going to scale it down a bit. And oh no, now this is inside of this shape. So there are multiple ways of doing the same thing in ZBrush. So I can just go ahead to my subtool and click on this icon to hide the visibility of the body. Or I can just introduce you to the next thing that I want to show you, which is the solo. So let's leave this as it is. And instead, let's go back to draw, right? Let's go to the preference palette, enable customize, just so that we have, I'm actually going to leave the enable customize always on so that we can bring in as many things as we need. And we're going to go to the transform palette again. And we're going to look for this button right here that says solo mode. So I'm going to hold Control, Alt, click and drag and put it in here. Or maybe I think we can squeeze it in here. By the way, if you want to rearrange your things in the UI, you can hold the Alt key and click and drag things around just to maybe open up some space. All right. So the solo mode allows you to visualize only the selected subtool. So right now I have my cylinder. If I click on solo, this is what I can see. And you can also assign shortcuts. But again, we're going to try to stick to the system. You can optimize the system later on, which means I've done that already. So it means that I can just press a quick shortcut and I can access my solo mode. But we're going to concentrate on the system. So we have this now. We're going to bring in the gizmo and we can give it some shape. We can scale this up a little bit, maybe bring in the gear icon. And I'm going to introduce you to another thing that might be quite useful, like the taper deformer. So I'm going to click on the taper. Again, very similar to what I just showed you before. You have these cones. So I'm going to reduce this slightly and maybe increase that slightly and then push this like so. And then click on the gear icon, click accept. So we just now have a simple tapering effect. And this is a little bit harsh, so we can replicate what we did before with the smooth. So we can smooth maybe the top bit, the bottom bit, and we can change the profile with the wide cone like so. And that's it. I'm going to click on the gear icon and click accept. Cool. So now I'm going to get out of my solo mode and I'm going to move my leg around to the left-hand side. You could do it on the right-hand side. It doesn't matter. So let's zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to scale this down and I'm going to push this like so. Great. So you see, with a couple of simple things, we already have something going. Don't worry about the symmetry just yet. Concentrate on one side and then I'll show you how we can optimize it for the next one. So I'm going to repeat the process because I know I threw at you a lot of information if you're new to ZBrush. I'm going to repeat the process and then I'm going to ask you to do the same thing, but for the hand of the character. And I'm going to show you very quickly how it's done. So now that you have something like this, if you like it, again, go to solo. If you like the shape, you can stick with that, or you can actually bring in a new one. So you can click on append and bring in something else. In this case, I already did the deformation that I needed, and it kind of like looks nice as a starting point for the arm. So instead of appending, I'm going to use the duplicate. So I'm going to click on duplicate, and that creates exactly the same thing in here and in the same spot. So I'm going to bring in the gizmo, and I'm going to move this around. Now this is going to be the arm of the character, or the upper arm. So maybe I'm going to make it a little bit farther here and rotate that. And I'm going to move it like so. Maybe a little bit that. Actually, let's move this down like so. And I'm going to rotate my character or my camera around. And I'm going to rotate this slightly backwards. Okay. And now I'm going to use the same tool to do the forearm. So let's go ahead and duplicate it one more time. So now it is here. And then we can just go ahead and move this around. We can rotate things something like this, maybe around there. All right. And I'm going to reduce the scale in the y-axis. All right. So that is not too bad. Again, we're going to keep it super simple. And you'll see as we move forward in these videos, things are going to start clicking. All right. So we now have this maybe a little bit less than that. All right. Cool. So now I'm going to go ahead and select the leg, this one right here. And we can go ahead and position it a little bit better, like so. So very quickly, I'm going to show you how you can take, let's say, the leg, mirror to the other side, and then you have the subtool with the two legs. So we're going to go to the tool palette, and we're going to scroll down to where it says geometry. Click on geometry. And then in the geometry palette, this is anything that has to do with the actual geometry, to modify the geometry, to add creasing, to remeshing, a bunch of things that we're going to look into a little bit later. But if you click on the modify topology, this has a bunch of commands that allow you to modify the topology in this case. So the easiest one is the mirror and weld. So I'm going to hold the Control, Alt key, and left click, and I'm going to put this one around here. So this is something that I use quite a bit. And when you're building characters, creatures, anything that has symmetrical limbs or horns or anything like that, you're going to be using this quite a bit. So this command or this button that says mirror and weld, it has three tiny axes or letters here. You can see it is the X, Y, and Z, and only the X is white. The other ones are grayed out. So that means that the mirror and weld will happen on the X axis, which is the reason why I ask you to put all your legs and the arms and all of that in the, let's say, in this axis facing the character, or facing, or with the face of the 3D space facing you. So that means we want to have the symmetry in this axis. So let's click once, and there you go. We can go into solo mode, and we have the two legs, and they're perfectly symmetrical. Let's get out of solo mode. So the system would be to select the different subtools, and I'm going to show you how you can actually select things a little bit faster in this process. So if you want to select the arms, but you have these names that are called PM3, cylinder 3D01 or 32 or 3D3, it's going to be really hard to find which one it is. So to select things directly from the viewport, so selecting the object that you want to play with, you need to hold the Alt key and the left click once. So I'm going to hold the Alt key and left click once on the forearm. Not the forearm, sorry, just the arm. And if I select the forearm, I'm going to hold the Alt key and click it once. There you go. So you can just hold the Alt key and select the different assets that you have, the different tools. All right, so for this one, I'm just going to increase the size a little bit. I think that's going to be better. And I want to be able to manipulate these two at the same time. So if I bring in the gizmo and I do this, it's kind of like breaking things. I want to make sure that I also move this. So I can select the other one, but there's no like an intuitive way of doing it. It's not like you can hold the Shift key and select both and move them at the same time. You need to either merge them together so that they become one single object, or you can use this little icon here in the gizmo. This is slightly more advanced. I don't think you're going to need it a lot of the time. So we're going to skip it. I'm going to show you anyway, but I'm going to skip it as part of the steps, because I think it's just getting into that optimizing territory. So it's actually really simple. You're going to click on this, and if you enable this, it's going to move everything at once. So everything that is visible. So if you want to protect things from being moved by the gizmo, you need to hold Control, Shift, click and drag, and then hold the Alt key while you're dragging to kind of like protect them, and that way you can move them around. So like I said, it's a little bit more cumbersome, so just ignore that. I just wanted to show you that it is possible. It's one of those things that you need to learn the system first, and then you can optimize it. So the simplest thing is to merge these two things together. So I'm going to go to the top part of the arm, right? This one right here. And I'm going to scroll down to where it says merge. So this is just like a section within the subtool palette. So everything in here is related to subtools or the objects. So I'm going to click on merge to open this out, and you have a few options. I'm going to click on merge down, but I'm going to make sure that the one that I want to merge down to is below it. So the forearm is here and the arm is here. That's perfectly fine. Selecting the one on top, and it just makes sense to click on merge down and click OK. So you're gonna get this pop-up every time that you use this, unless you click on this always OK. I prefer to just click OK because it will remind me. It's kind of like, are you sure you're gonna do it? So I'm gonna click OK. All right, that's it. So now we have three objects, one that has the legs. I'm pressing Alt and click, the body and the arm. So now that we have the arm, we can just go ahead and play around with this a little bit more. So I'm gonna scale this like so. And I think I'm gonna adjust the legs as well, just to show you something else. So now that I have this, the gizmo is currently on the leg that essentially we use to mirror and weld. So if I scale this or move this around, it's just gonna move the entire thing. So this is when you can start bringing in other things. So I'm gonna introduce you to the working with symmetry, and then I'm gonna show you how to do the hands, and we're gonna move forward with the next bit of the workflow. So let's go to draw, go back from this. Let's go to the transform palette. You'll notice that this transform palette is one of the most useful ones. And I wanna hold the Control and the Alt key and click on this activate symmetry. And I'm gonna put that right below the mirror and weld. It just makes sense to me. It's kind of like related. So it's perfectly fine. Just on a side note, the transform palette has a bunch of things that you can explore, but basically when you activate it, so if I click on this one and you check what's happening, then the default one is gonna be the X symmetry. Again, one of the reasons why I ask you to create your character based on this front view, because you could do it like in this view, but then you'll have to use a different symmetry, like the Z symmetry, or the Y symmetry if you wanna do up and down. So just ignore that for the time being. Just make sure that you have your character facing the character, let's say here, which is the front, or like the Z axis, sorry, and that the activate symmetry is enabled. So now if I move my cursor around, you see two dots following me around, right? Now let's bring in the gizmo, and we're gonna be able to do this, all right? So let's go ahead and maybe scale this down. I wanna simplify this character. It's just gonna be a silly little cool bean character. All right, so I think that's it. I just moved this with symmetry. Now let's get out of Gizmo. And the important thing about symmetry is that it is connected to the subtool that you're working on. So if I select my arm, it doesn't have symmetry. You see the symmetry is deactivated. So that's very important. All right, so let's go ahead and do mirror and weld. So now we have two arms, and we can also turn off the polyframe, and we can just evaluate how our character is going.